We all think about it, right?
Yeah.
What happens after we die? It's like this big mystery.
Yeah, it's a question that everyone has pondered at some point.
It's a question that you've brought some really interesting material to look at this law of one idea of the afterlife. And I think it's important to say right off the bat, we're not talking about like typical religious stuff or even like a philosophy debate, you know.
Right.
This is deep dive into what these law of one books actually say.
Exactly. We're looking at a very specific framework here. The law of one material, basically a bunch of transcript, they say it's communication from this social memory
A
complex.
social memory complex. Now that sounds pretty out there.
It does, and they call this complex Ra. This started back in 1981. It's like if you think about a group of souls or a unified consciousness, all these beings coming together with this shared purpose.
Okay.
It's a pretty complex idea, but what makes it really interesting is that the material is super comprehensive. Like the ideas build on each other throughout the books.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's like a really intricate system they've put together.
Exactly.
So, for everyone listening, here's the plan. We want to look at the journey through death and what comes after. What happens when you're dying, that exact moment, and then what this law of one perspective says about the afterlife. We want to keep things clear, structured, and easy to understand.
Right. It can get pretty complex.
Consider us your guides through all of this.
Yeah, we'll try to point out the most important stuff and hopefully have some aha moments along the way.
Definitely some aha moments. I think that's what makes this so exciting.
Yeah.
So let's start at what feels like the end. But according to this material, it's really just a beginning. What happens when we die? Now, the law of one talks about a vibrational transition. What does that even mean?
It's interesting. The law of one doesn't see death as this harsh separation.
Okay.
It says there's this gradual shift in energy in your vibration.
Hmm.
As your physical body gets closer to death, the vibration of your mind, your body, your whole spirit, it all starts to change.
It's not like a painful thing.
Not necessarily. It's more like a natural process. Like your physical body just can't handle that level of vibration anymore.
So it has to shift.
Right.
And you're not alone in this, are you? You've got this whole crew helping you out. They're like the welcome wagon to the afterlife.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The material talks about spirit guides, loved ones who've passed away, your higher self, even beings of light from like other dimensions.
Okay, so who does what?
Yeah.
What are their roles? Break it down for us.
All right. So if we look at the bigger picture of the law of one, these guides are there to make your transition smoother. It's all about helping your soul move on to the next stage.
Okay.
Spirit guides, they offer advice, share their wisdom from their own journeys. Then you have your loved ones who have already passed on. They're there to comfort you, make you feel less scared.
Oh, that's nice. So you're not just thrown into this all alone.
Exactly. And then your higher self, that's like a more evolved part of you, steps in. It helps you start reviewing your life.
Oh, wow.
And then there are these beings of light from higher densities. Think of them like guides who help you navigate all the changes in vibration.
Like you're moving up the ladder and they're showing you the way.
Yeah, something like that. Helping you move towards the right place for you.
It sounds pretty gentle.
In the ideal scenario, it's all about love and respect for the soul's journey.
That's really interesting. It's not about forcing you into anything. You're not being dragged along, kicking and screaming.
Exactly. And this whole idea of free will is like fundamental in the law of one.
Okay, so you've made this vibrational transition. You're not in your body anymore. What happens next?
Well, that's when things get really interesting.
I bet. What do they call this? The life review.
Yes, the life review. Or they also call it the healing process.
That seems like a pretty big deal.
It really is. It gets to the heart of learning and growing spiritually.
Okay.
Right after you die, the law of one says you go through this self-guided life review.
Self-guided, so no one's judging you.
Right. It's not like standing in front of some higher power being judged. It's all about looking inward and reflecting. You're in charge of understanding your own life.
That's different.
Totally. It shifts the responsibility onto you.
So you get to see your whole life all over again, like a movie.
Yeah, but with way more understanding.
But why? What's the point? It's called a healing process, so it's got to be more than just watching a replay, right?
Exactly. It's not about being rewarded or punished. The law of one says it's about understanding and healing. You see your whole life with incredible clarity. You understand the impact of all your choices.
Even the bad ones.
Especially the bad ones. But it's not about guilt tripping.
Oh, okay.
It's about learning and growing. It's a way to really grasp those life lessons.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like taking responsibility for your actions, but in a way that helps you learn.
Right. It's all about growth.
So, okay, you've had your life review. You understand your choices, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now what? You're not just floating around in the ether, are you?
Not quite. That's where this idea of alignment and the harvest comes in.
Alignment and the harvest, what does that even mean?
Well, remember how we talked about vibrational frequencies?
Yeah.
The law of one says that after death, your soul naturally goes to a realm that matches its own vibration. Like, your energy attracts you to a certain level.
It's like finding your people.
In a way, yeah. It's like tuning into the radio station that matches your vibe.
Okay, so what about this harvest? Sounds a little biblical.
It does. Basically, think of it as graduation, like leveling up in a video game.
Leveling up. Interesting analogy. So who gets to graduate and where are they going?
In our current level, they call it third density. The harvest usually means moving up to fourth density.
Fourth density. And what's so great about fourth density?
It's all about love and understanding, and getting there depends on your spiritual growth. Specifically, it's about whether you lean more towards service to others or service to self.
Service to others versus service to self.
So service to others is all about doing good for others without expecting anything in return. Service to self, well, it's more about putting your own needs first.
Okay, so it's like a spiritual report card. Did you help others? Did you just focus on yourself? What's the passing grade here?
All right, so listen to this. If your actions, your intentions, were at least 51% focused on helping others, you're on track for this positive fourth density. You've got those good vibes.
51%, that's all it takes.
That's what the law of one says. But if you're mostly about serving yourself like 95% or more, then you might end up in a negative fourth density.
Yikes. Sounds intense. And what about those in between? Not quite good, not quite bad.
Right, that's a good question. If you haven't really figured out which way you lean service to others or service to self, you'll probably just keep cycling through third density.
So back to square one.
Kind of. It's another chance to learn and make choices.
Which brings us to reincarnation. Reincarnation. In a lot of belief systems, it's seen as a punishment, like you're paying for your past mistakes. But is that what the law of one says?
No, not at all. The law of one sees it as a choice. It's not a punishment. It's a chance to keep learning and evolving.
So you choose to come back.
That's the idea. You choose to come back to learn more, to work through karma, to keep moving towards greater love and understanding.
And the goal is to, like, eventually merge with, I think they call it the infinite creator, right?
Exactly. It's all about going up those levels of consciousness.
Okay, so we've got reincarnation. Now, there's also something called guardians. Who are they and what do they do?
The guardians, they're like higher beings who watch over everything.
Are they judging us?
Not exactly. The law of one is big on self-evaluation. You're judging yourself. But these guardians, they make sure you go to the right place, the right vibrational realm.
So they're like the cosmic bouncers. They're checking IDs at the door.
Kind of, but more like gentle guides.
Okay, so they make sure you end up where you're supposed to be. So where do we end up? What about these Gevicanic plains? They sound like vacation spots for souls.
They're pretty much like spiritual rest stops. It's where you go between lives to recharge.
It sounds like a much-needed break after all that life review and harvesting.
Yeah.
So what happens in these rest stops? Just chilling.
Not quite. It's more than just relaxing. In these realms, you have access to all kinds of wisdom. You can talk to guides, teachers, even beings from higher densities.
So like even more advanced than the ones who helped you during the transition.
Exactly. It's a time to reflect, learn, and get a bigger picture view of your whole journey.
And you can stay there as long as you want.
It seems like you can. Some souls might hang out there for a while before deciding to come back for another round.
Makes sense. Got to process all those lessons. And what about these healing centers? Sounds like not everyone has a relaxing spa day in the Devicanic Plains.
Well, life can be tough, right? The law of one recognizes that some souls need a little extra help.
Yeah, some lives are harder than others.
Exactly. So these healing centers are there for those who need more intense healing.
Like a spiritual hospital.
Yeah, you could say that. It's all about getting back to wholeness before continuing the journey.
Okay, and then there's life planning. So it's not like we're just randomly assigned a new life. We get to choose.
That's a really cool part. You're not just a pawn in some cosmic game.
Okay, so how does this work?
The law of one says you work with your soul group, your guides, your higher self, and you actually plan your next life.
Seriously?
Yeah. You review your past lives and decide what you want to learn next. You pick your challenges, your relationships, everything.
It's like we're designing our own curriculum.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the experiences that will help you grow the most.
That's amazing. You're not
Yeah.
just thrown into a random life. You have a say.
Right. It shows you're really in control of your own evolution.
Okay, wow, that's a lot. We talked about the moment of death, the life review, that whole alignment and harvest thing, reincarnation, guardians, these devacanic planes, healing centers, even life planning. That's the law of one afterlife, right?
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive picture. And what I find really interesting is that it all comes back to personal responsibility. You have free will, and it's all about learning and growth.
It's very different from a lot of other ideas about the afterlife.
Definitely.
So for everyone listening, here's the main takeaway from all of this law of one stuff. Dying isn't the end. It's a transition, and you have guides to help you. You review your life, figure out what you learned, and then you align with the energy you've created. You might move up a level, or you might choose to come back and learn more. There's rest, there's healing, and you even get to plan your next life.
It's all about choice and evolution.
Yeah, it's pretty empowering when you think about it. It makes you see life's challenges in a whole new light.
Right. It's not just about what happens to you, but what you do with it.
Exactly. And if we take this idea seriously, if our choices really do affect our journey after death, then that changes everything, doesn't it? How we live, how we treat others. It's a lot to think about.
It really is. It's a whole new perspective on life and what it means to live well.
Absolutely. So if any of this sparked your curiosity and you want to dive deeper, definitely check out the actual Law of One books. We
Ah,
just skim the surface here. There's so much more to explore.
yeah, it's a whole universe of ideas.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.